like that. So this week, Linda and I are talking about this phrase, ethical imagination, that we first heard those words put together by John Weber and, Akichino Weber and John Peacock. So I love this expression because it brings together two words or concepts that I really value. Though, when I was thinking about it, I thought, well, it probably would be more accurately expressed as imagining what is ethically decent, maybe even virtuous, what is most ethical. Because there are lots of things that could imagine that would go in the opposite direction. Really, all the atrocities we see in the news were unimaginable to me until I saw them. And I must say, much of what former President Donald Trump said in last night's debate was unimaginable, although I've heard it many times. But that's not what we're talking about here. What we're referring to is what is the most ethical action, or what is a more ethical action we can imagine given the situation or situations we find ourselves in. Of course, there's big idea differences in what people think is ethical, of course, and that's based on values. And we can see this being played out in the divisions in our country and really all over the world, political divisions. Probably each side of the partisan divide perceives the other as being unethical. So we have to find our own understandings of ethics, our own internal ethical compass, and as much as possible, imagine into how we could be more ethical based on our values. So as Linda and I commonly do, I went to the dictionary to find definitions of imagination because I find it helpful to bounce my thoughts off of definitions. It kind of gives me a starting place, a prompt, so to speak. I'm going to talk about three different definitions. The first one is the faculty or action of forming new ideas or images or concepts of external objects not present to the senses. Now, that is sort of an interesting definition because in Buddhism, the mind is the sixth sense organ. And that is exactly the sense organ that's capable of imagination, the mind. Our mind or the mind of someone else's creates an idea or an image or concept that hadn't previously been imaginable. So that's the first definition. And we do use our sense organ of the mind. The second definition is the ability of the mind to be creative or resourceful. And right in the dictionary definition, they had a link about what resourceful means. So I'll tell you that too, which is having the ability to find quick and clever ways to overcome difficulties. I don't know about quick. It doesn't need to be quick. But we really are in the realm of ethics when we're talking about ways to overcome difficulties. So yeah, so it's easy to see that ethical imagination pulls upon our capacity to be creative. And as we refer to ethical imagination, we really are in the realm, when it's ethical imagination, of how to overcome or maybe never get caught in the first place in difficulties. Impossible in most or many situations, but possible to be less caught. It really takes imagination, really, to kind of look ahead and see what difficulties might be up there. Warning, looking ahead into all the difficulties that might be there can easily slide into fear and paranoia. So something for us to be mindful about. As we do in reflective meditation, as we allow scenarios to go on, we will sort of naturally or organically see what actions we might or might not take and where they might or might not lead. Now, of course, this is not perfect, nor is anything, but this is imagination, and imagining the future is a whole lot less full of many twists and turns and things we can't imagine. So, in other words, the way I'm saying that is most of the ethical decisions we make in our life are complex. And there's really no simple, easy sense of what is best, and especially what is best for all, not just people, but the environment, etc. Last night before bed, I read the lead interview in a Sun magazine, and I didn't think I'd be interested in it, but it ended up being fascinating. It was about the food that the Inuit people of Greenland have been eating, throughout whatever the centuries. And so it turns out that one of the things they commonly do is they preserve birds that they kill. And there's a lot of stuff about they kill the birds that are really too many. They're not like, extinguishing species, but the ones that are overpopulated. And then they put them into the bellies of seals and preserve them in this way. And the person who was being interviewed spoke about that there is a lot of racist denigration for this kind of eating from the dominant white Danish colonizers. But it turns out that this method of preserving food might be very healthy, and especially for the gut biome and maybe for the environment. So I guess I never could have imagined that. I never could have imagined that way of preserving food, that way of eating, and that it could be very healthy. That's why I really enjoyed the article. Um, and I thought it was really resourceful to use the food that is available, because up in northern Greenland, we're talking the world of ice and, not a lot of animals running about. But the food that is available and preserving it in this way. I can't do justice to the article, but that's what I could remember this morning. But back to the definitions. So here's a third definition of imagination: the part of the brain that imagines things. Now, at first read, I thought, oh, come on, there isn't a part of the brain but then I thought about those neuropsych people, and they probably can tell us what part of the brain imagines, because they're going to see it light up in a PET scan. I think it's a PET scan. I'm not a medical person. But maybe that's why there's all this renewed interest in psychedelics, because they free the mind to imagine and even see and hear things that were previously unimaginable. This is called neuroplasticity. And again, a word of caution: not everything we imagine in altered states, whether it be psychedelics or meditation, not all of it is reliable and not all of it is ethical. So imagination really comes about from being open, and that means being willing to have at times your security undermined. The way we always thought things were, well, maybe they're not quite that way. They're different. Dare I say that having an internal stability, we need an internal stability so that we can tolerate being rocked by the unknown, by the unimaginable. And I think this is what we're developing when we meditate and sit with whatever comes up. And of course, like all capacities, ethical imagination is something that is cultivated. Ethical imagination is something that is developed. And I believe that what we're doing when we're languaging our experiences in meditation, what we're doing in the sharing part and in the journaling part, when we're finding language, makes it more likely that we would develop that capacity to ethically imagine. When we're finding these words, it opens things up. It offers us more it offers us more alternatives. Our inner world gets richer. And I would hazard to say that our outer world can also become richer and kinder as we continue to develop our ethical imagination. Wow, that was just 10 minutes. That was maybe luck and experience. I know how many pages I have to write. Anyway, that ends the Dharma talk. And